Ashley Gattuso. I am joined today by Gynn, managing editor of the Tilt newsletter. I am super excited to have her with us today. We are going to learn all about how she manages the production of the Tilt, what they are doing in terms of covering the creator economy, and kind of, it's super meta, right? Because y'all are playing the game while you're in the game and reporting about the game. So just a quick introduction. I almost met Ann at Content Marketing World. We messaged each other back and forth. We saw each other from afar. We knew each other's faces from social profiles, but did not have a chance to meet in person for some reason. I mean, it was a smaller conference. People were everywhere, but somehow it didn't happen. So this is actually our first time to talk. So it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Ann, thank you for coming on Screen Share.
Ashley. Funny how that works out when you try. It seems like you can't at the end, so goes quickly.
I'm super excited to have you with us. Before we get into screen sharing, I would love to just kind of have you tell us about your background and how you came into the role you have right now with the Tilt.
Happy to do so. So many moons ago, I got my career at a newspaper, which kind of made me well suited for what I do today as a reporter and editor, and then shifted over into the marketing and public relations side before somebody could lay me off. So I got into that. And the great thing is that there's so much content and storytelling and reporting that goes on with that. So that's what I do, is educating on marketing and content, but I also have worked with clients to advise them on marketing or handling. Years ago, I did the air show. I did for an air show. I did their media relations and promotions. So if you ever need someone who understands FAA regulations on open taxiways, it's a skill no one else cares about. Yeah. So I've had some fun clients, and I've gotten to work. I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio, and I've gotten to kind of big community projects of bringing scholarships for kids and different projects like that specific to Cleveland. But right now I'm doing a lot of education on marketing and content.
Okay. This is right up my alley. I love the Content Tribe. I love what the Tilt is doing. I am going to warn you, there may be some moments where I ask you to stop and repeat yourself. And that is because I have noticed that your connection may be stopping and going. So we're just going to ask everyone to bear with us. If I feel I have missed something vital, I may give you a hand wave and say, like, say that one more time. So that no one misses the gems that you are delivering today on Screen Share.
Yeah, thank you for everybody's patience. It's weird the way my internet's been going lately, so I appreciate it.
Let's talk about the Tilt and kind of the impetus, the origin story of the Tilt. And get ready, people, because this is like a content entrepreneur newsletter. So kind of take it away. How did you get pulled into this project, and what's going on there?
Yeah, so it's an interesting origin story that started before I got involved, but not too far along. Joe Polizzi, who founded the Content Marketing Institute, he sold it, I guess it's about 5 years ago now. And after he sold it, he was planning to write fiction books. And he did write one fiction book. And then the pandemic hit. And he found that he was getting a lot of inquiries around his book, Content Inc. So it's the business model, or a model to build a content business that he'd written a while ago, I think 2014. So he saw this need that people are trying to, I think the pandemic escalated it, right? It gave people time or a specific need to look about building their own businesses, and they know content well. So they were reaching out to him and asking, and so he was looking for, he decided to get back into the nonfiction world and updated the book and launched the Tilt for content creators who want to build their own businesses, to have a financially self-sustaining business from that. And that's much like a media model of building an audience on which you would monetize the audience, whether it's through sponsorships and advertising. It could be selling subscriptions, and we can certainly talk more about the ways to make the money. But the Tilt comes from, the name comes from his Content Inc. model which is finding your content tilt. What makes you different or your content different from all the other content that's out there from that? So that's where the name comes for the tilt. The intention was always to start a newsletter, a twice a week newsletter, and grow the business from there.
Okay. So when did the Tilt newsletter launch?
It launched in this past April. So April 20.
Okay. So launched in April 2021. And I know there's a community. I'm not super awesome with Discord. Like I have Slack and then I have Discord, and I like the noise that the like the preset default or whatever, like reminder noise. But I quickly discovered that I wasn't ready for that alert at the consistency at which the Tilt community is chatting. Like it's very busy in there. So can you tell me a little bit about whether the community like launched at the same time and how those two pair with each other?
Yeah. So the community launched probably in the summer.
Okay.
We got the newsletter off and the Discord channel was created. And in fact, it's become so active, I turned off the notifications because everything was just appearing on my screen. So there's a way to limit the notifications. And in fact, I was new to Discord too. Younger people I know, my nephews that's how they use it all the time to communicate. So I'm learning and actually liking it a lot more than some of the other platforms. But the community was always an essential part of any content business or of most content businesses. And so that was always the intention of the Tilt, was to build this community from it. And so the Discord launched shortly after the newsletter and has grown exponentially in the past few months to be a very active community with people who are very dedicated and interested in content, in Web 3.0, in NFTs, and there's all sorts of conversations that go around content business that's happening there. So it's kind of fun to see real people talking as opposed to creating in a vacuum.
Yes. So newsletter creators who are listening, you want people like me complaining that your community has too many notifications. Like that's your goal, is for me to go like, wow, this is a really busy community, right?
Yeah.
You want that. So, and I know that Joe kind of spoke at Content Marketing World about how the community feeds the newsletter feeds the community. It's this kind of symbiotic relationship that's going on there. And it's some ways in which if you are a content creator who has a community, then you have a tribe or like this group of loyalists who would make great potential future creators to your product or employees or things like that. So it's really impressive the amount of growth that it's had since the launch. So that brings me to the last kind of question I'll ask before we start the screen share and like get nitty gritty about the newsletter. And that is kind of what phase the Tilt is in right now, and what business models are being used or explored, and how that's going.
Yeah, so the Tilt business model is fairly unique of what's out there. So it starts building the audience first, and that part isn't unique in any content business. So all the newsletter creators out there, it's about first before you have something that you are if you're looking for an audience and to monetize the newsletter, you got to have your audience first to do that. So it's built that same way to come through. And then actually soon we're going to be starting to launch the newsletter. By the way, I guess we didn't say newsletter's free. The community is free. So that part isn't bringing in any revenue yet. In about a few weeks from now, so in December, we'll be launching the Content Inc. education model from that. So Content Entrepreneurship 101 and launching, and those will have a fee associated with them.
Okay, so you have an audience, you have something you can sell them. They have lots of free ways to engage, and this will be like what I feel like Cody Sanchez came on one time and she called those like info products. was her name for it, but a course or something that you can sell. So that's the stage the Tilt is in right now. I enjoy getting this newsletter. It's one that I open and curate from frequently because I feel like the things you're publishing are things that the audience of Opt-in Weekly and curated users should care about. So without further ado, I'd love to invite you to screen share. I think it's fun to go reverse, right? So show the finished product and then let's talk through how decisions were made and what challenges you've faced or what fun decision making went into the process. It's always fun to see a creator explain why this looks the way it looks.
And frankly, it's always fun to be asked to explain by people who are really interested. So
okay, we're all wearing our newsletter nerd
right, exactly,
right now.
Exactly. From it. So first, I'm going to start before we even get to the newsletter. This is the landing page. This was actually one of those big conversations. It was very important for Joe because we're a newsletter focused business to make the homepage the newsletter sign up landing page. So if you go to our site, you will see that you can't see the categories as standard traditional website. But if you do scroll down, you can see those categories from that. So I just wanted to explain, if you go to thetilt.com looking for something, it's a little more complicated than that.
Right, because your main goal on this page is to get people signed up. And then your secondary goals are to show them how to navigate to other parts of your business.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The whole goal is to get them to sign up and explain the newsletter from that product. So that's the way has been since the beginning.
Nice. Okay. So here's the newsletter. I love this layout.
It's a very simple layout. And we specifically don't use a lot of imagery. So I'm just going to quickly scroll through this. You can see, other than a couple, I think there's 3, it's very from that. And that's what we found gets through the most. So spam filters or imagery doesn't get to do that. So it's not necessarily the best design practice, but it is for newsletters to come through. So I'm glad to hear.
I think other newsletter creators will feel your pain, or it's palpable, right? The fingers crossed, hoping something doesn't get clipped, hoping something doesn't go into a spam filter or get caught by one. And what we have noticed on our end is limiting images. It's just one of the ways to do that. And I think I am more and more being drawn to a few images is more powerful than 20 kind of attitude. So you're sending something that's a bit long form to people who are interested in receiving something long form.
Right. And it's interesting. We haven't been around that long, right? 6 months. But we have adapted what we originally planned and actually made it shorter. So the original concept, and we're still holding true to it, but it's a little different. The original concept was to make sure that you could read the newsletter and you didn't have to click on anything. It was not meant to drive you to a website. It was a self-contained, like The Hustle, like Skim, you could just look at it or read it from that. So that was the intention. It is still a self-contained newsletter, but what we found was the length of the newsletter was getting truncated, particularly in Gmail and several other ways. So we have shortened. So for example, I'm going to scroll down. In each issue, we do a content entrepreneur spotlight. And when we started, we originally started the full-length article here from it. We had this intro. We have a standard intro template format that we use, our actionable, our favorite advice. And then after it, we used to start down here, we'd start the story. And then if people wanted to learn more, they could go, but they didn't have to. They could get the takeaways. We cut out that story part of it to keep it shorter from that. We've also made the tilt feature that's up here. We'll talk more about that. So we've made those shorter of what appears in the newsletter. It still gives you all the information you might need in that moment, but again, it gives you the opportunity to learn more. And the reason we did that was because people weren't scrolling down. We would find that they weren't scrolling down far enough in the newsletter to even get towards the end where there's more content that we want them to see. So that was one of the changes we made.
Excellent. Okay, so can you talk me through the content categories that you have, what a reader should be able to find in that category, and what kind of inspired, if there's a explanation behind why this category is important?
Yeah. So we have a section in the newsletter called Things to Know, and I'm going to scroll down there so we can look at those categories, because those are the same categories that we use for everything else.
Okay.
For the blog and the full-length articles from that. So the first two important to our audience is money and audience, which are really interchangeable. Sometimes we have content that fits both categories. In fact, often if it relates to audience, it relates to money. So those are the two big things, taking the money from how to earn revenue, opportunities to earn revenue, different things that will help in that category from a revenue standpoint to come through. Audiences is about growing and building your audience and how do you attract people, but it's also about who your audience is. So for example, we might share if news came out about the updated makeup of Facebook regarding ages from an annual study or something, we might include that in the audience, because that's educational info that might help some of the readers from that. But we also might include how do you incentivize audiences to sign up for your newsletter kind of thing in there too. So that's a nice mix. And those are the two primary ones. The other ones are technology and tools. So we found a lot of updates on particularly social media, adds this or that. And we wanted people to have a place to get those quick updates or for technology and tools. We've created full-length guides on tools that are available. So that's an important how you do your job, how you can create your business. You might refer to it as operationalizing, right? So operations, we call it tech and tools in the newsletter, but it's really also the broader topic of operations to come through that. And then if I scroll down a little bit more, we're going to get to the business of content. So these are the topics. And in this issue, we share the two podcasts that Joe's involved with. The last ones are really just more business articles. Our entrepreneur is happier than everyone else, pricing strategy ideas, preparing for 2022 for your small business. They are not specific to creators. They're specific to operating a small business. So again, we share that kind of content too, because creators often get into business, and probably a lot of your newsletter creators, right? I love the topic. I love to create, and right, I've got to invoice and I've got to figure out pricing and that kind of drudgery that comes along.
Yes, I get a lot of questions as people roll into Curated and launching their newsletter that have to do with the business end of that. And so it's nice when we can link out or bring in some content from another brand that is for small businesses and kind of help them understand that side of it. Because I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's how to launch, but it's all about the content. And it's not about the other side of it, which is like how to bill, how to get an income stream, how to have multiple revenue streams, and how to play the game in more of a long game way than a like, this is how to use a tool kind of way.
Right. And that's really the hard part. And like you're saying, there's already content out there, so you can bring it in and help share and take the content that's already there on small businesses. I don't need to recreate what small businesses need to know for 2022. I can share a link and people can go if that's the area of interest. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so those are kind of some of the, I would call that like curated content and curating your own content, right? Like brand content mixed in. So it's hybrid, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the sections. And then you carry out this idea of a tilt all the way through with all these headers, which I adore. So can you help us understand full tilt versus half? What the other tilts are? I just made up one. Is there a half tilt? Now I
No, there isn't a half tilt, but maybe we should.
I'm running on half tilt right now.
Frankly, that's more of our status some days from that to come through. So okay. Yes, it's all about tilting. The full tilt is, and obviously you can see here, is the first article in our newsletter, but it is a feature article on a topic relevant to our audience. This one that I'm showing here is about YouTube from that. But so full tilt is the feature article in the newsletter. It is also it is a blog article too. So all the content, all the original content we're creating also goes onto the blog for SEO purposes and for educational and long-term, but primarily it started for SEO. So that's the full tilt, is the full story on something. And again, that's original content that we're creating based on interviews or our own research or our own perspective to do that. And with the full tilt, what we do is, why it's both the full tilt, or why we call it that, aside from right, it's the tilt, is we do an intro of setting the stage on the topic and why it should be important to our audience or why they would find it valuable. And then we launch into the practicality of it, the how, which we call tilt advice from that. So it comes from us. It may be other people that, like, this came from a study, so it's not our specific advice, but we've looked it over and this makes sense for our.
You've deemed it worth sharing and summarizing and contextualizing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said. Right. It's our takeaways. What are the key things? You don't have to read, in this case, what are those key takeaways that would be helpful for your business from that? Most of what we write, and this one is based on a study, we just did one where we interviewed business and talent managers to know, when does a content creator, when should you hire a business manager or a talent manager to help you? And so we did interviews. So the advice came from them. It's the advice that we support and echo. Mm-hmm.
I liked that. I felt like the answer, like the gut answer, is yesterday. Right?
Yes.
But I appreciated that you guys you should check this out if you're thinking about this, because it kind of was like, once you have this challenge, or once you've met this like stage, or like when you can no longer X, right? So I liked that there was advice like that in there. So this gives us a feel for what full tilt offers. Story, like main topic, advice. What happens as we go further into this newsletter? So
as we go further, we do not call our content entrepreneur spotlight anything tilt. I know, it's shocking from that. Just as a note, as we scroll down, this is original content. So these are writers who go out and find the creators and interview the creators from that. Some of it's formula, as we can see here, and then a lot of it allows them to tell their own story from that. So certainly from a branding standpoint, we're still using the tilt coloring, and we're using the arrow, but we don't actually use the word tilt.
That's okay. I think it might be too much tilt, really, if it was every one of them. But here's a good question that I think about a lot, because I've worked with plenty of brands who have found a lot of success in talking to real people and spotlighting and featuring either customers or people in their industry who are thought leaders. So what have you found to be I feel like sometimes the strategies just kind of evolves in a situation like this, because sometimes I'll interview someone who then knows about our brand because I've interviewed them, but it was an organic benefit to them to go through that interview process, or things along those lines. So what have you found with Content Entrepreneur Spotlight? Like, how did that develop, evolve? how are the people who you spotlight engaging with the brand? And then how are the people who are reading this engaging with the spotlight tea? Is that
Spotlighter? That's a good question. I never thought of that. So from the very beginning, we wanted this to be a range of people that were interviewed from that. And I mean that from a platform. So whether it's Twitch or TikTok, Instagram, if they have a blog, a newsletter. I mean, we're big champions of when your main focus, your main platform is your own in some ways, but most of them are not from that. Frankly, they've started on social.
Now I suddenly want to launch a social platform called TwitchTok.
I like that. Do you know,
it was just hearing you say them back to back made me
let's
like,
do it.
Okay.
Although Twitch, I just read the other day, like the most successful ones are 16 hours a day. And I thought, well, my internet's not that great, but aside from that, I could not stand that. I guess I'm totally the wrong generation for that. But anyways, so we started from the very beginning, we started like, how can we get different names that we aren't seeing the same names all the time? And so we deliberately are going after not the most popular stars. Frankly, to be honest, they probably wouldn't give us interviews because we're just starting up, right? So while we have a solid subscription base of over 8,000 subscribers right now, we're still too little for some of those people to talk to us. But what we realized as we were going on is we don't really want to talk to most of them. We want the people who are, maybe they're not full-time, maybe they still have a full-time job and are doing this, or maybe they just achieved that they could quit their full-time job.
Yeah, that like magic moment. Okay, so I like that. It's like an intentional attempt to go outside of what could be termed like the creator economy or the content entrepreneur echo chamber, right? Like it's intentionally introducing new voices to the mix.
And relatable voices. Mm-hmm. So if you see somebody like Mr. Beast out there who's making millions and getting all this attention, it's so attractive that, wow, that's what I want. But that's not where most people are going to go, right? So we have purposely, and this is kind of where the evolution has come in, to realize we're looking really to create or to help a middle class creator, a middle class entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that the person can't make millions. We're not preventing anybody from that happening, but we're looking at how can I create and support myself through my content business, a true small business from that. And that's where we find the niche, the content tilt out there, right? That we don't see a lot is how do you help create a creator who could be middle class from a perspective of living, that they can support a middle class living.
I love that. I love like, cause that suddenly is like opening the Coke can or pop top, whatever you say in Ohio, and like letting the pressure off of this, like, well, if I'm going to try to be a content entrepreneur, I have to have an ambition of being a multi-millionaire.
Right.
When really, no, you should probably have an ambition of replacing your current salary or potentially doubling that. Like that's still a quite reasonable dream.
Right. It's yes, I think reasonable dream is a good way to phrase it. It doesn't preclude millions, but you have to start someplace. So let's get with supporting yourself first. And awesome. That's really where the opportunities lie.
Okay. Well, I'm now like, I feel like we have spotlighted the spotlight. What else does a reader then consume after they've gotten the main point and the spotlight?
Yes. So, and I will say, we were talking early about stories that people relate to and customer stories and stuff. Those are some of our most well-read. We do the creator spotlight, and then I'm going to scroll down. We also do a stan feature. And the stan, for those, it's fan, but people like to, younger generation call it standing. So that was one of the ideas I came up with to speak to, like, hey, we speak this. we joke about it now. But anyway, the stand feature is a
don't
short
think I'm young
feature.
enough because I didn't get it.
No, it's right. It's like, it becomes this lingo of like, oh, it's a stand. And like, so some people get it, but you don't even have to get it to read the content.
I understood, like, this means we are pro whoever, but like, that's fun that, some of us get to learn the new lingo.
That's how I learned it when we were coming up with this. So
Okay.
yes, hashtag stand. This is now more on a higher profile creator who we haven't done an interview with, that existing content's out there. It may be multiple sources, but that we give a few paragraphs about who they are, and we say why we particularly are a fan of them or of their business more than the person. So that's one of the things that we do, so we can get some names in there people might recognize, but also we don't invest as much time in that as we do with the originals.
Excellent. Okay, so where does that check out the story take me to the Tilt website, to a blog?
So this, let's go. I'm going to go down. I'll do it. So we have all the articles. We take our full Tilt feature, our original content entrepreneur spotlight, and the stand for every issue. So I'll pull up the one we're looking at now, and that goes on the blog.
Okay.
So right here, you can see the 3 stories we've been looking at from that. Okay.
And so is the byline of the person who wrote the blog also the byline of the newsletter snippet creator? Like, is snippet even the right word at this point, or is it
frankly, I call it the newsletter version and the blog version.
Okay.
From that. So we start with the blog version and create the newsletter version, which is really like, for the content entrepreneur spotlights, it's all still here, right? It's just cutting that from it. But when we look at it now, here's the story. So here's that longer story that isn't in the newsletter from that.
Gotcha. So that started out originally as assigned to the newsletter. Now it is like almost considered the deeper dive if you want to go that deep from the newsletter. So you're doing what? Oh, go ahead.
I would say just a logistics tip that your audience might be interested in. We actually have to publish the blog article first. So people don't know, they publish the day before. So technically it would be accessible, so that we can link to it in the newsletter. It has to be published live. So just a little trick.
Okay, so I rarely do this, but I'm going to let you know that a percentage of our viewership right now, like the people who come in through Curated, they live in a land where they can optionally publish their newsletter as a web page. And then if you allow, I'm so not a good tech talker, something called a permalink, right? If you allow a permalink with each entry in the newsletter, then that creates a URL for that particular piece within the newsletter. So it's kind of it's a different route. Yours reminds me of, it's WordPress, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So yours reminds me of some of our users who might have a WordPress blog that they then use Curated to self-curate from and send it into the newsletter builder and then curate themselves and have it. And so you can like set up automations to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then it would bring it in and flow it through. So I know everyone has their own process, but it's always fascinating to me. It makes complete sense because you're reverse engineering from the long form to the newsletter version.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting how people get into it in the different ways to approach it from that. So we're beginning. And from that, so that's where it started from that. And it's one of those things that's been working for a while. So we're keeping it for a while.
Yeah. So it's a 24-hour before, like anyone who's listening, if you want what goes in the Tilt 24 hours before, you have to be an active reader of their blog or potentially go subscribe to the RSS feed.
Yeah, right. It'll show up in your RSS feed, or just know where that secret place is on the landing page, on the homepage. Scroll down there, and around 4 o'clock every afternoon, right before the next day's publication, the newsletter publishes. They're live.
Nice. Awesome. I feel like we're like in secret insiders now.
You are. I don't think I shared that publicly. So.
Uh-oh. Let me know before this publishes tomorrow if I need to edit anything out.
It's all good. It's all good.
Excellent.
We put it before then, so.
Excellent. Okay, so are there other content sections that you feel like we should discuss?
So something that may, as I get us way too interested from that, I'm going to scroll.
Oh wait, I think you stopped your screen share because I'm seeing me, which is not what I want to look at.
See how that happens. I was scrolling and hitting too many things.
It's okay.
The one thing I will say, we curate content that I give the things to know section. I talked on the categories before, but we try to do a sentence or two that is enough of what you need to know in the moment. And that relates to the content entrepreneur needs to know. And then we give our take on what you should learn from that, what you should know, why we think it's a good idea. Again, just to customize it, we have nowhere near the resources to create all that content, the news content, and other people are. So, and I know we talk about the value of content curation. This is where we do it, but we put our own spin on it with the tilt take.
I love that. So what this reminds me of is, I think I was curating like a year ago from someone who had done a study of Axios newsletters and what things they had found successful, or like it wasn't from Axios. I can't even talk today. Axios. It was from like the person who did the study. And one thing that they pointed out a lot was this, I think they use like the bottom line, which equates to like, here is the news, here's what you need to know, right? And so to me, Tilt Take is very much like that. Like, here's the news, here's our slant on it. Like, here's why it belongs in this newsletter at this moment in time for this audience. So in my creation process, as I curate and then create commentary, it's all very much about how does this serve the reader? Should this be it? Like I start ranking things like which of these pieces serves my reader best, which, you know, like, so as editors, we go through that process. And I'm assuming that what ends up in here is a fraction of what could have ended up in here. So can you tell me a little bit about the process of sometimes the shorter form curated stuff takes longer than the longer form original stuff. So that would be interesting to know.
It is funny because sometimes there's a lot. And sometimes I'm like, I got to fill this category and I have nothing. And so I have to go search deeper from that, because what we do is 2 entries for each category from that. Now, if we absolutely couldn't find something, we wouldn't publish something just because we needed a second one, but we always have. You can always find something. That's the beauty of the internet right now. But so where I look for the ideas, I first look to what people have shared in our Discord channels. Our community shares articles. And then there's even interest of, I might pick up, I never thought of this angle, so I can see what they're talking about. There are other communities also on Discord and elsewhere that talk to content creators. I subscribe to newsletters. So talk about meta versus meta. I take newsletters, but here's where I also think, I also give those newsletters credit. So while we may be packaging it differently, and I'm going to show you, it's a little hard on the screen to read, but give the gift of a YouTuber, and it's the news about YouTube's going to let people give gift memberships. Well, the news was on TubeFilter, but how I learned about it was through TLDR marketing. So I'm going to link to the longer article that they did on TubeFilter, but I'm also going to give them a shout out from that. And in some cases, I'm finding stuff on the internet. Twitter, which obviously is the internet. Down here was something that originated on marketing charts, but how I learned about it was look social media. from that. So we do, as we find it, we give credit to it. Sometimes it's the platform itself. So Pinterest sends out a news release. We might go there. There's a number of places of pulling it all together from that. And because we're newsy, it doesn't, if we can't use it now, we might use it in the next issue. That's kind of where we go with it. But there's a number of places. Now, when I get stuck, I'm using Google search. I'm using search and hashtag searches on social media channels. If I'm stuck for a topic and I don't have anything, then I've got some keywords that I go and start looking for it. And the trick to me is when I'm searching for it isn't about what shows up on the search engine results page for general search. It's clicking on that news tab in the search. So I search for it and then I click news to see the more recent stuff on the topic, because I don't want.
Okay, so now I feel like I need to share. This is almost part of my process. We're just two newsletter nerds talking about how we curate stuff right now, right?
Found our kindred spirits, right? Yes.
Yes,
Awesome.
I have shared this with people before, and yes, there are some amazing like people who love aggregate tools. Like, keep using them. I have not pushed them into my process yet, and part of that is because I have like a setup system. And it's hard to find the time to change and add the new thing to the process, right? But I set up Google Alerts, and then I change it to where I don't get the emails.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just go and check the Google Alerts, which is essentially the times those keywords appeared in news articles over the last whatever amount of time. So I sleuth the Google Alerts for the keywords, and you would not believe like how many keywords I have
like to
set
see
up.
it just because yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have so many keywords set up because it's not just curated, it's other brands. And it's like my CEO, like, I want to know, like, tell me if he makes the news, or tell me, And so like I have a set of keywords for this particular newsletter that I set up, but then I also automate content from sources I know are highly reliable. So I will find their RSS feed, and I will have it go ahead and collect anytime Ann Hanley posts a new blog, it is waiting for me to consider putting it in my newsletter.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So, but Google Alerts, like, it's old fashioned to some people. People who use the word stan may not know what I'm talking about. But they're there, and they're still what they are. And I still like, I find that I surface content that other people who are writing about the same things don't surface. So maybe I just like, if you are one of the people who listens to this far, you've now discovered one of my secrets, but I've not been too secret about it. But there are some other tools like Feedly and Up Content and things. I've heard really good things about BuzzSumo.
Oh,
yeah. So I'm thinking about exploring those and setting up more automations. But for right now, like Google Alerts, like, people go search a word or go set up a constant reminder about a key phrase, and watch how, like, creator economy suddenly starts giving you sources from people you didn't know about. Like, that's what I like, is like, it feels a little like I get to leave the echo chamber of like, here are all the newsletters that I read.
No, you can pick out those things. In fact, so I have a Google alert set up for content entrepreneur, because it's such a new term. So we can see, because it's a new term, right? We found India is starting to use the term.
Nice.
So something I would never have known without the Google alerts from it.
Excellent. Yes.
Other people aren't writing about content entrepreneurs. So
right. So if you are a newsletter creator who is also like a category creator, or you are using a term that you have coined, that's a good way to like it's like the thing they have kids do when they want to teach them how viral things, like how things can spread on the internet. Like, just set up a Google alert for that, TwitchTok thing you made up, and see who's using it now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so remind me if this is like almost the end. I feel like we are close to it.
Yeah, no, we
Yep.
are. We do a quick talk quote.
Mhm.
So I sometimes find it within content. Most of the time it comes from Twitter. It's why I'm actually excited about Twitter Blue. I'll just email the quotes to me and just put quote in the subject line when I catch it. So
Ah,
it's easy from that. Yeah. And then we're just including, we've just opened up a merchandise store. So we put anything, which I didn't talk about that as a revenue stream, but we did just open it up. It costs money or tilt coin. And so that's another revenue stream, but we aren't selling, right? None of this is about selling. And even when we start the education and offering content entrepreneurship 101, we will talk about it and mention it, but of the newsletter and pulling that kind of stuff.
right. So you're kind of following the 90% editorial, 10% promotional rule of thumb. That is why editorial newsletters get opened and read, people. Like, this is why. Okay, so I feel like we have two more things that I definitely don't want to miss. And that is, one is like your editorial workflow. Because I am in like a very jealous position right now, because you have writers and you're coordinating a calendar and you're like you're piecing the newsletter together, but not necessarily in charge of every word that goes in it, like creating those words. Like you have a structure in place. So I'd love to know like what amount of time you're spending on this a week, what workflows are you using? And I see that you have a spreadsheet in the top left corner of your screen there, ready to show us like how you run this thing. So yeah, I'm super curious.
So before I even get into the spreadsheet, we work with a group of 4 freelance writers.
Okay.
And the freelancers write all the content entrepreneur spotlights. And so we have 4 of them. Somebody may say, well, why wouldn't you have one that can do all of them? And it's something we've had the discussion about, but we use freelancers, multiple freelancers, because they can find different people. If you have one person of them, their chances are they're going to get into a rut from that. So we have 4 different perspectives. They're based all over, they're primarily in the United States. One of them travels the world. So anyways, and they all have different interests. So because it's so personal, we find that if they're interested in it, they're more likely to write the better piece from it. So that's how we create the content entrepreneur spotlights.
Okay, excellent. And so that also like supports the avoidance of the echo chamber, right? Because it's not only who this one freelancer knows about or has in their network, it's about who these 4 people can find and who are actively looking for people for this particular content piece.
Right. And everybody, because we don't deal with an industry, right? Content creators aren't an industry as such. They're not focused on travel or family or business. These freelancers we work with have their own lives online. So they're going to see people because of their interests. And that's going to work for us because we're not covering an industry from that. It just opens it up. So that's very helpful. Then if I, as a middle-aged white woman, cisgender, all that kind of stuff, if I'm looking for it, I'm going to have a different feed than the woman who travels the world and all sorts of interesting things that, yeah, I'm not going to come across what she's going to come across.
Right. I love that.
Yep. So that's one of the important things to be inclusive in our content entrepreneur spotlights. The full tilt feature, most of the time I write those, and that's just been the way we've started. So, right. So we're doing a lot in our pre-revenue stage I create a lot of the full tilt articles, those feature length articles. And then Joe Polizzi, who founded the Tilt, is writing some of them. He has particular areas that we think he's the expert at. We know he's an expert at those to create it. The stands, we have one freelancer who does all of those, and that's worked out well to come through. And then the things to know section, that's me doing that from it.
So that is one of the most like effort requiring pieces of this is the curation of and bringing in information that is helpful. So you are you are an editor who is writing, like, you know what your main point is going to be. You're either writing it or assigning it or working with Joe, et cetera. And then you have other people managing, like filling in the different holes, right? That you are like, I think this is really valuable for people to hear. If you are serving an industry and you want to hire people to help serve that, great. But don't get so far away from it that you aren't on the pulse of the news that those people should care about, right? And so like maybe that is part of the reason you still have yourself doing the curation, is because you want to feel like you're in deep enough. Is that a good suspicion of mine?
Yeah. It's also, it is one of the things as we look and could hire out more, I wouldn't hire out that part right now, because in the curating all that content is what helps inform everything I know that elsewhere. An example. So the content entrepreneur spotlights we include our favorite actionable advice. 3 things that are the 3 takeaways from the piece. The freelancers, some of them write it. I will be the one that writes it or pulls the content, because one freelance, the person who we're publishing on Tuesday may have similar advice to the person we're publishing on Friday. I know we just gave that advice. We should not give it again. And I can adjust it. The original writer would have no clue because they're not looking at everything. And so the different categories, by curating different categories, I'm keeping my pulse on what we're talking about from that. So I would have a hard, doesn't take as long because I've already got to research this stuff anyways. So, hey, let's just put it in the newsletter. So, yeah.
All right. So there were a few audio gaps in there, but they were not so big that I don't think people will understand. But the key takeaway is Anne is making sure that she has I don't know what the right metaphor for this is, but like you are involved enough in each section to be able to give, like, to tweak the content so that you are maybe the way to put this is you are imagining yourself in the seat of the person receiving this content, and you are saying, how would I feel if, like, does this echo too much? Should it be different? And so you are the reader. We used to call this in college, like, reader response, like approach or something like that. So not too many pieces missed. I probably kind of filled that in with stuff I didn't need to, but I think it's important enough for people to know that, like, when you are hiring people on to help with pieces, that you can only get so far away if you want to create something quality for the end user and that recipient. So that is part of Anne's job in this situation, is to make sure that she's representing the reader's point of view or perspective, or like experience. Maybe experience is the best word for that there.
I think it's experience. It's creating a seamless experience for them, right? So that it doesn't feel like, wait, I just read this 2 days ago, or I'm only reading about Twitch content entrepreneurs. Like, do they just write about Twitch or TikTok or whatever? Well, no. And that's my role, is to make sure that there's that diversity, just like a newspaper, right?
Yes, fair and balanced.
Different kind of fair, but yes.
Well, I mean, it's like tilt balanced.
Yeah. I like that. It's tilted appropriately, right? Awesome.
Okay, so you keep a content calendar. You keep people in check on when their content is due based on when its published date is coming up. How far in advance are people submitting their content?
So if it's me writing, it's pretty close to deadline.
We have different standards for ourselves and our people we pay to do things.
No, it's going to work if I write it, or at least I hope it's going to work. So the writers are submitting, a few weeks ahead of time. I'm actually at a point now. that I can plan and have content for the next month for the content entrepreneur spotlights to do, so which is very exciting. For the holidays, I can actually give it to the newsletter producer ahead of time. So we'll get to that point.
I just felt all the editors in the world go, bravo.
I know, it's great, right? When you wake up and you're not like, wait, I hope they get it to us today. Or somebody asks for an extension and you're like, no, I can't. I fortunately am not there right now. I have been since the past 6 months, but
congratulations. I feel like we need maybe the Seth who edits this video, maybe I should have him throw in a trophy or some kind of image. So editorial calendar, you've got things in a spreadsheet. People know when their stuff is due. They are pitching the spotlight people and you are maybe giving them leads. Is that a good?
I'm rarely giving them leads.
Okay.
So we do have some people who suggest content entrepreneur spotlights. And so some of them, I'll put that out there, but most of the time it's their job to find them. And they do pitch them to me, but really it's to make sure the pitches are pretty easy. Like, hey, I'm looking to do this person that does this. And all I'm looking for is that there's not any huge scandal around them, which has happened, or that this person is giving unscientific advice. That hasn't happened yet, but those are the kind of, I'm looking very broadly at stuff, or too many people doing lifestyle makeup and wardrobe things. So let's mix it up a little bit more, that kind of thing. So that's really what I'm looking for in the pitches, just more of weeding some of them out.
Excellent. Okay. And so what kind of editorial process does that go through? Do they do a first draft and then have a round of revisions, or
most of the time they do a first draft, and then we've gotten to the point where we don't really have rounds of revisions too much. Sometimes I might have a question or two, or as I'm going through and editing that was, hey, it really should be this way, and I'll just give them a heads up and make the change from it.
All right. Yeah, I do that too. We're pinched for time. Here's what I'm changing. You should note that I want it this way in the future. The end. Keep it.
And that's the good part about keeping the same people doing it and not going back, so now we have a style and it's evolved over 6 months. And so we've been using the same people for 6 months. So they know they have an understanding. So I get stuff that I can use right away, which is exciting. Anybody who's an editor out there will have found. So
I'm also jubilant in this moment. So I see a template that looks like a Google Doc. I'm curious what's waiting behind us there. I'm assuming if this says template newsletter, it's going to kind of be what's in the next issue, or all those little spots. It's
the bits and bobs, right?
Yes.
So we are working on Friday's issue. I won't even, but this is where I start from that we create a Google Doc that hits on everything. It should mirror what we're seeing elsewhere, but there's some internal things that you don't see specifically in the newsletter. So it's just a reminder to me so that I'm informing the production person. What's the subject line? Our SEO blog, that's the SEO headline for the blog, which is why the title will be different often with the blog than it will be in the newsletter from that. The purpose of a subject line is not the same as a headline. The meta description. If we're doing internal linking to articles, do we have related to something that we're talking about in there? What links should we be including? Clicks to tweet. So CTTs are the clicks to tweet that should go into, this is for the blog content. But it's so I don't forget, we don't have a lot of people, but it's so I don't forget what goes in there. And so I do that with the features and just have the standard. This is also where it's helpful to create a template so you don't forget something to include. If you're just doing from scratch every time because you know it, like we started the business of content, we just started adding articles and to general business stuff in the last few months. And sometimes I forget to scroll down and write that in there. So it took me a while to get used to it, but I'm making sure to get it in now. but yeah, this is where, and in fact, I even do the things to know section in the newsletter document. There's no other separate document. I just take my notes in there and make it easy on that.
Excellent. So you've got kind of a map of that particular issue. You've got something that you can just quickly make a copy of and start fresh. So you can have multiple issues working at once if you needed to,
right,
for any reason. And then you're working in your ESP to lay this out. I'm assuming you're able to clone a previous issue and bring content in, or are you building from scratch?
No, she has a template. So Laura Kozak is our head of operations and production and all that. She's the wonderkin of a lot of things. So then she'll take this newsletter, and I create separate files for the full tilt, the length, the blog articles and files. She'll go into the Google Docs and then magically create, in my mind, it's magic. Then you get this nicely designed thing that comes back to me and the proofreader, and as well as Joe, to give it a look.
Awesome. Okay. So that's happening twice a week. You're doing proofs like the day before, 2 days before?
The day the newsletter gets done, it's pretty much the day before. Okay. So the proofreading is going to get turned around very quickly. There's a lovely woman who is on call to get it done. And we get that done usually the day before, the way I've been going, I should say, as far as scheduling.
Excellent. Okay, so is there anything else you want to screen share before I ask you a few more questions just about the tilt coin and things along that direction?
No,
Okay. All right. So questions I have, if we stop screen sharing, two things I want to discuss. One is, speaking of Meta and the community and the Tilt newsletter, Discord, etc., there's a thing called Tilt Coin that people can get. How does that work, and what's the play with that, and kind of like help people, newsletter creators especially, understand why this is part of your strategy?
Yeah. So Tilt Coin is Rally. First of all, let me start off by saying I knew nothing about coins and NFTs and cryptocurrency. So it's manageable, and we have articles on our site that take into the fact that I know nothing. I wrote some of it, and some of it Joe wrote with my help of saying, but I don't understand this. So first of all, understand that creator coins, also known as community tokens or social tokens, are something that really are going to be the wave of the future in what we're seeing. And it's a reward system. We're using it as a reward system for our community. So I'll back up and say, you can mint a coin. You can mint your own coin. We used, or more importantly, Joe used the Rally platform. I would suggest checking it out because there's a ton of creators doing all sorts of different things from it. Like Megadeth has their own creator coin. Brian Clark has a creator coin. Jay Bear, for those of you who are in those names you hear frequently from that. And it's up to each creator of how they use their coin. And Joe has chosen with the Tilt model is people are rewarded with these coins based on referrals. So it's one way we've grown our subscription base, is that everybody who gets a newsletter also has a referral link at the bottom of the newsletter that they can share. And then they get $5 worth of Tilt coin every time somebody signs up through their referral link. So a lot of people do it, free t-shirts and this kind of stuff. This is with a coin that people can use within Tilt. So you could buy merchandise from it, or education and training down the road. We're working on that. You can also sell it for cash money too on the thing if you want to, though we encourage people to keep the Tilt coin. As you accumulate your coins, you get different levels of access. Again, this is the Tilt model in the Discord community. So there's a VIP channel that gets exclusive content to drop there. They could ask Joe a question anytime, and he will make sure kind of stuff. So there's levels that your coin, depending on how many coins you hold, can help with that. So that's how that we're choosing to do.
Okay.
Coin.
Exciting stuff. All right. So I talked about the tilt, we talked about the community, we talked about the coins. I loved diving into your editorial process and the content categories. That's where I live and kind of like enjoy being. There was one last like topic, and now I'm like racking my brain. I'm looking at the Google sheet I have in front of me, trying to remember what it was. I know what it is. Okay. It's not on here. It's not on here because it just feels like a natural last question, right? And that is speaking to people on the cusp of launching a newsletter or who have recently launched a newsletter, people in the decision mode or in this, like, what could I really produce and create, et cetera. Like, what advice would you give to those people? And I think it's fitting because you have been covering their genre for a while now, that you might have some advice to give to people who are like starting out with newsletter.
I think I'm going to probably do two pieces,
Okay.
but they relate to each other. Unless you have a very personal topic, or unless you are very much known or have a ton of experience in your area, don't make it about you. You can bring you into it, and that's how you personalize it, but don't make it all about you. And the other part of it is related to that. It's about telling stories. Yay. So people want, if you think about it, and I used to be, I enjoy media news, celeb entertainment news kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, every profile for a while I was reading was saying they walked into the restaurant. This was pre-pandemic days. They walked into the restaurant wearing their white cardigan sweater, and you know, they set the stage for it. The reason they do that, and people keep reading to see the examples. They love to set the scene. And I think that's where a lot of it, and that's really what the content that resonates in the tilt is, those content entrepreneur files, spotlights files from that. It's the story. Maybe I can learn a lesson, maybe I can laugh, depends on what your purpose is, right? Mm-hmm. But those are those personal connections that you can make, and you could do that in a way that it's still not all about you.
Okay, so don't make it all about you unless you are like, you already have 100,000 people who would subscribe right away, right? like that's those people, that's okay. Like you've got that in the bag.
Right. If you're a celebrity, go for it.
If you are not that person, beware the danger of narcissistic newslettering. Okay. Number 2, tell stories, specifically other people's stories.
Yeah.
Inspirational stories that resonate with your specific audience, like who you want to attract. Now, that's a good, almost a segue into a last question. And that is in kind of the evolution of an audience. And so did the tilt, because there was an origin story from a book, there was kind of a narrow zone of people that you knew you wanted to go after to start with, or that Joe knew he wanted to go after. Did that narrow to middle class at some point? And how did that happen?
I think it was always there.
Okay.
I just didn't know it.
Okay, this is what I'm getting at. Is sometimes you find out who you should be, like, you don't have to know at the beginning. Like, you should have something that you're going to like narrow that scope at some point.
And I think for us, it came when we are a big believer in research and using that original research in a number of ways for content. So last summer, a study for content entrepreneurs, you can find it on our website, where we did the first research, and what we found, and that's obviously it's based on who answers, but what we were surprised to find is that they were older. It wasn't Gen Z who was making a living doing this. It was more Gen X. It was older than you would think of when you think of influencers, right? So it's important for us to figure out how we captured a category that wasn't influencers. so much of content creators has become synonymous with influencers to run a business, to make the money, because that's not who we're talking about from it. They will find value in the content we're creating, but that's not our target audience, are not people who want to be not our target audience is not people who want to be influencers.
Okay. I like that. Like, so the survey is what helped you kind of have that understanding. So I guess that's advice too, is like, come up with ways to survey your audience and understand what you could do. I use a thing with like, I look at what categories people are clicking on, because I have kind of sub personas who I serve within one newsletter. So you have like creators, marketers, and publishers, and I consistently see which of those sub personas is engaging more based on like those categories, because I can look at link clicks per category.
Oh, yes.
And then I can ascertain like from there, like, oh, the publishers are like engaged, but it's the marketers and the creators who are like really engaged, right? And so that can help me figure out what order I should be putting the content in, or like what maybe would be a good spinoff if you were going from like a a morning brew to a marketing brew,
yes.
or like a thing like that. Okay. So any last thoughts as we close out this screen share interview? It's been a delight.
I've enjoyed the conversation. I always love geeking out about newsletters from that. I think the biggest thing is for everybody to just, you can do it. It's not overly hard. You just have to think smart and be smart with your time. So yeah.
Excellent. All right. So go check out Anne's handiwork at thetilt.com. Get yourself subscribed and give us some love. If you have questions, we always encourage people rarely do. You will make my day if you do. Ask a question in the YouTube comments section. If you have a question for Anne, the Tilt, Opt-in Weekly, Curated, put them in there. I will make sure that she is aware that you have asked something specifically to her. Or you could like go join the Discord and probably get some response over there if she hasn't turned off the notifications.
Right. Well, and here we'll elevate it. Ask the best question in YouTube. I'll do one tilt coin. The best question in YouTube will get I should say a $5 worth of tilt coin.
Okay.
It goes up and down.
The best question by Thanksgiving, because this is going live tomorrow. So yeah. Okay. So that's 2 weeks for the best question to happen in YouTube. She's so strategic on her feet. It's scary.
So we'll do $5 in tilt coin.
$5. I'm starting to think of my own question. Maybe I should have an alternate profile on YouTube. Okay. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been pure sunflowers.
Thanks, Ashley.